If Volkanovski beats Ilia Topuria, he needs to walk away from the division. Now, the hell am I to say? Who the hell am I to say, you've done enough, Volk. You've done so much, you've done it so successfully, move on. Well, it's just a thought. But everything that Volk started with a thought. Somebody had the idea. Somebody said to him, try 145. He weighed 211 pounds. Why didn't he try 205? Why didn't he try 185? Why didn't he try 170? Why didn't he try 155? I mean, I'm just sharing, like somebody gave him this idea based on something. And he listened. Somebody told him, punch your way into the clinch. Somebody told you, come right. I mean, he listened. So why can't I get a conversation started? If Volkanovski's in a wildly unique spot, and that wild uniqueness has put Max also in a unique spot. Like, I get a lot of credit. Oh, Chael, you're such a good mind in MMA. I love to listen to you. That means a lot, and thank you for that. I just remember things, right? You could come to me or you could go to Google. I'm a historian on the sport, so anytime there's an example of what should we do, I can just look back to some organization at some point. Here's what they did in that spot. But then I can also tell you it didn't work. So let's assume to do the opposite, right? Like, we can kind of play that game a little bit. I've never seen anybody with the level of success of Volkanovski. I don't know what he's supposed to do. The clearest number one contender, the clearest threat to Volkanovski is Max Holloway. They fought 3 times without splitting outcomes. So it is nearly impossible to get to a 4th. As a matter of fact, Max just fought. He didn't call for it. Max understands what time it is. They asked Dana about it last night, post-contender series. Dana White said, do any of you want to see that fight? So that's a really bad idea. Now, we didn't have to be told that. We didn't mean Max to not call him out. We don't need Volk to not call Max out. And we didn't need Dana to say that. We understand. It's a really unique situation. Now, if Volk is to beat Topuria, and I just feel that he needs to do it. They're leaning in that direction. Volk came out a few days ago. He said, I'm doing it. I'm not even waiting for Islam. And one thing Volk doesn't like to do is wait. He likes to stay busy. God, I love that about him. I respect that so much about him. Now, got to do it. Said he's going to do it. He's got to do it, right? Okay. If Volk is to leave 145, and he's to leave it completely, right? And that's a big ask of anybody. Walk away from a world championship. Walk away from continuing to stack bricks on legacy. Records are only there so somebody can come and beat them. Well, wouldn't it be something if it took 100 years to beat Volk's? Volk knows I can keep stacking defenses. I know I can because I've already fought all these guys. But he also understands what you want to see. He understands where to bring the money in. He understands the importance of parity. And if you're having that conversation and I can get parity to outweigh the other, and the other's got to be a very strong feeling, right? One that we could only imagine. Who gets to be world champion? Who gets to have that level of success? But if the parity and if the draw and if the attention and if the money wins out, going to 155 is very different right now. It is not a matter of can Volk beat Islam, because if he can't, he gave up a belt and he doesn't have this belt, and he'll be 2-0 against Islam. And Chael, by your own math that you just said about Max, you can't get rematches if there's not parity. I don't agree. I don't agree with any of it. Starting with Volk versus Islam. I don't know that that's the route that we need to go. And if you're trying to win world championships, sure, but he's already got one. Now, if you're trying to win championships, I do like that theme, and I get it, but there's another one. It's called the BMF, and it currently sits at 155. And there would be no reason that Volk could not go up to 155 and challenge for the BMF. Now, moreover than the BMF or that belt, the point that I'm trying to make is the amazing fights for Volk at 155. And there's no rule that says he has to start with Islam. That might be exactly where you guys want to see him go, but is it? If you think about that, is it? if it's very likely, in fact, more likely than not, that Volk can beat everybody in his way. And if it's more likely than not that Islam can beat whoever comes his way. So we believe that we can still get that fight. Matter of fact, we can get that fight a year from now. But prior to that, we can get Islam in 2 other matches, and more importantly, we can get Volk in 2 other matches. Don't you believe that there's some very meaningful things to do? I mean, what would you do if I told you you're going to see Volk and Islam? Would you celebrate? Probably. That's a pretty cool fight, right? Which would you rather see, Volk versus Islam or Volk versus Poirier? What would you rather see, Volk versus Islam or Volk versus Oliveira? What would you rather see, Volk versus Islam or Volk versus Gaethje? What would you rather see, Volk versus Islam or Volk versus Fitzayev? I mean, I know I'm going down the card a little bit, but even the Fitzayev one's got you thinking. There's some really incredible matches up there. We don't need to ask Volk to go out there and walk on a tight wire, right? I mean, my dear son who's training for the 2032 Olympics, it'll be on NBC. You might want to mark that on your calendar to make sure you watch. But my dear son experienced his first day of wrestling practice 15 practices ago. He's kept track. Within 5 minutes of being on the mat for the first time ever, in a pair of shoes that I got out of the Lost and Found, because we didn't even know we were going to wrestling that day, and he doesn't have any shoes, he was wrestling live. They were going live as hard as you could go. He doesn't know anything about wrestling, the rules or anything. It's one of these great experiences, right? Talk about a great way to learn how to swim is to jump in the deep end. Over time, we're doing 3 practices. The coaches realize there's kids here with more experience, and there's this stud in the group that's about 11 years old. He's won a whole bunch of tournaments, but my son is about that size, so they got to keep going together. So guess what the coach did? My son all of a sudden one day is like going with this guy like it's more competitive than it's been. I'm thinking, my God, my son's a natural. This Olympics thing is going to work out. Well, look a little closer. The coach made the guy close his eyes. And then a couple of rounds later, the kid's got one hand behind his back, and it's like tucked into his shorts, and he won't pull it out. He's got to wrestle with one hand. And this kid still scored all of the takedowns and points. But imagine having the deck stacked against you. And think of the example I just gave, because that's essentially what we're asking Volk to do. We're asking Volk to go to 155 pounds. Oh, by the way, take on the absolute hardest guy. No time to acclimate, no time to adjust. We have had fighters fly into different countries on a Tuesday, fight on Saturday, lose, and then come out and complain to the world that they weren't acclimated. I wasn't adjusted. We have had fighters cut weight a day before, lose, and not only use the weight cut as the excuse, they've gotten Rogan and the announce team to co-sign this bull crap statement. So why, if those guys can't acclimate on a Tuesday to a Saturday or a Friday weigh-in to a Saturday night, why do we think that Volkanovski on his first time to a brand new weight class that he's never been at should go up and take on the absolute hardest guy? I'm just asking a question. Why would it not be reasonable to move him up, but instead of establishing on day one, right? Because one of 2 things happen. Volk beats Islam. Great. What do we do then? We see Volk versus Islam again. It's called a trilogy match. Volk doesn't beat Islam. What do we do then? Well, he left 45, and we can't really match him up again for a guy that he had twice. Why play checkers? Why not play chess? Why not put it down the road a little bit? It's a very unique situation. Every time we've tried to build fighters, we haven't got the fight that we want. One of them always gets upset. If you wanted to see Darush versus Islam, you should have just made the match. But instead of making the match, you get cutesy with it, you bring in Charles, and now you got a rematch that was 3-1 the first time, it's 4-1 the second time. I mean, I'm just sharing with you, don't play that game. It never works. Never is not a broad stroke statement. Go back and show me 2 guys that you built. You never built them. You never built them because you don't know the sport. You don't know what's going to happen. But this is a case where you got a pretty good idea. I was at an NCAA tournament this way, and I'll name drop it. Stephen Neal, one of the best heavyweights to ever live, went on, won 3 Super Bowl championships. Oh, by the way, didn't even play football since high school. That's what a stud this guy was. He's on one side of the bracket, and your own Brock Lesnar was on the other. And this was the main event. It's the heavyweight match. It's going to go last. It's the last thing any wrestling fan will see for the one event a year of wrestling that's covered by ESPN. Now, all they got to do, though, is they got to get there. And it never works that way. Well, not only did they get there, they pinned their ways through. It was a very unique year. You had two great big guys that barely made the heavyweight limit. They had an advantage in every match they win, and we were pretty sure they were going to get there, and they did. I can't give you any more than pretty sure. But I'm pretty sure that Volk could come through 155. I'm pretty sure that if he acclimated, had a couple of fights at that weight before he went into Islam, I'm pretty sure we've got a lot bigger and a lot more interesting match than anything I could come up with at 145. And I'm just food for thought for you. But what do you do with Volk? There is times, it's very rare, but there is times where somebody's greatness gets in their ways of drawing. Roy Jones Jr. was the greatest fighter of the entire 90s. And in that entire decade, he didn't make enough money that some guy like a Tyson Fury will make in one fight, just for example. He just didn't have the opponent. He was too good. Jon Jones, maybe the greatest talent the sport's ever seen, fights in front of thousands of fans every time they're dressed up as empty seats. It's not Jon's fault. It's his greatness. And Volk has that same greatness. And I think 155 pounds opens a lot of eyes. It's just a suggestion. It's just a thought. But I think that Volk's going to do something. I think that Volk agrees with me. I think Volk would like something new to do. I think he'd like to stay at 45 and have some 45-pounders come and rise up. They just don't seem to do it. Volk asked his current guy, Ilie Topuria, to start talking about him because he wasn't doing enough. And Volk told Josh Emmett, "You Rodriguez, you guys go fight each other. I'm out because you're not coming at me." I think he'd like guys to rise up. But if you get a guy to rise up and you meet him up with Max Holloway, he's going to send him back to the end of the line. It's a really unique situation.